Chapter 5. Under the FSB Microscope. Moscow, Russia, August 2014. Shit on the walls, I asked. The cleaners found the men's changing room plastered in the brown stuff first thing on Monday, my colleague Sandy clarified with a nervous smile. Might have been Eddie, he continued. He pooed his pants after a night on the drink once and still brags about it. I sighed. The changing rooms were around the corner from the embassy bar. It was standard whenever anything weird happened at the embassy to point the finger at the Federalная служба безопасности, FSB, by default. However, the jury was out on the poo-smeared wall. It wasn't that long ago that someone had shat in the embassy pool and left it floating. This mattered to me because I had agreed to become chair of the Embassy Sports and Social Committee. It's normal for diplomats to take on voluntary roles at overseas embassies, and I was keen to start off on the right foot. I thought it would be a doddle. However, the embassy bar, the Hammer and Pickle, see what they did there, resembled a Wild West duty-free saloon, which stayed open late most nights. Most evenings, compound kids tore up and down along the long red corridor that connected the apartment and office blocks, hollowing like hyenas. And Martin Harris, who went on to be ambassador to Ukraine, but at that time was the deputy head of mission, said from the start that he wanted me to crack down on these foul antics. Specifically, he wanted a strict closing time for the bar and rules on the behaviour of children. No one says fun more than Martin Harris. I knew that would go down like a lead balloon, so I decided the perfect counterpoint to tougher rules was a free Christmas party for all staff and their families at the ambassador's residence. We could treat everybody, the British staff, the Russian staff. Everyone would love that, right? The SO has started an investigation, although I don't think we have CCTV cameras in the swimming pool area, the first colleague went on. Ah, yes, the SO, I replied. I'll give you a security briefing at 2 o'clock in the meeting room, the secure speech room. A while later, the tall lump and shape of the security officer, or SO for short, blocked all light from the door to my office. As I breathed, it was as if the air turned to ice in my lungs. He stared at me, unblinking, as if his eyelids had been removed in training. I have something else on too. Do you mind if we meet slightly later? I asked. He glared back at me, like Obi-Wan Kenobi finding an Imperial stormtrooper in his path. We will meet at 2. We will meet at 2, I replied. You never say no to the SO. He's the guardian of our secrets and protector against infiltration. He's supported by a team of mostly British ex-military and police security officers who prowl the embassy 24/7. All British diplomats go through a process called developed vetting, or DV. Getting DV, or having it renewed, involves normally a retired police officer interrogating you for several hours, having checked up on you with people that you know. Pausing here to say, this is what absolutely definitely didn't happen to Peter Mandelson before he got posted to the embassy in Washington. The truth will soon will out. I have agreed not to disclose the specifics of how the process works. I agreed with a Cabinet Office request to remove a 500-word section of the text here. But suffice it to say that most staff get a security once-over before they fly to Moscow for obvious reasons. DV is normally awarded for several years before renewal. Life in the Chancery was akin to membership of a secretive monastic order. The need for a solid wall between East and West was considered unfortunate, but inevitable. And of course, the risks were even greater outside of the secure walls of the embassy. That's my seat, I said. The scruffy man looked up with an oily smile. Oh, were you sitting here? He spoke with a slight English accent, suggesting an expensive education. We'd been in Moscow for less than a month and decided as a family to visit the Anglican Church of St. Andrew, close to the Kremlin. A good chance to meet non-embassy people and enjoy a Sunday service. Built in Victorian times, the neo-Gothic church had been used by the Soviets for various purposes, as a machine gun tower, a warehouse, and in more recent years, because of the amazing acoustics and its organ, a recording studio. It's still used today for organ recitals and concerts. It was handed back to the Anglican Church in 1994 during a visit to Russia by Her Majesty the Queen. It's now a major centre of worship not only for expat Brits, such that there are left in Moscow these days, but also for a community drawn from many countries, including Russia. Until recently, the vicar carried the title of chaplain to the embassy, British Embassy, and was afforded diplomatic status, God's ambassador. We sat down surrounded by a sea of empty seats as it was the holiday season. St Andrews was waiting for a new vicar to be issued with his visa, so a lay preacher was holding the service. The kids were bored and cranky, so my wife Catherine took them to an adjacent playroom. I'd stepped out to see them for the exchanging of the peace, but when I walked back into the nave, the geezer was sitting in my chair. Could have picked any chair. There were over 100 empty seats all around, and the bric-a-brac of personal possessions and kids' toys and hymn books on our seats suggested that these seats were occupied. But no, he decided to sit in my chair. He got up and moved to sit somewhere behind me, though I was aware of his prying porcine eyes on my back. After the service, as I was having coffee, he slimed up and offered a limp handshake. So are you new to Moscow? He asked. Yeah, that's right. Did you come here for work? Yep. Where do you work? You know where I work, I thought. At the British Embassy. Oh, that's interesting. Do you organise lots of events to promote relationship between our countries? I've just arrived, still figuring it out. I turned away, found Catherine, and we left with the kids, and we went off to our favourite Georgian restaurant just round the corner called Khachapuri, walking past the Ukrainian embassy. Good heavens above. This Russian dude at church kept appearing throughout my posting. Whether he was in a suit or in scruffs, his appearance was unmistakable. A greasy, unattractive face with jam-jar glasses, fawning, slightly bent posture, and an obsequious manner. I had a handful of regulars, and he was one. You might be surprised to learn that the number of British diplomats in Russia is smaller than the number of Russian diplomats in the UK. So, for the FSB, that makes every one of us a high-value target. Taking out a single British diplomat from Russia tips the balance more in their favour. If they get under our skin, we might get fed up and leave. If we are stuck to a honey trap, the Foreign Office will send us home. If we are turned, we'll be traitors and cursed for all eternity. And maybe end up in jail. We shine as brightly on the SO's radar as on the FSB's. One of the oddities of diplomatic life in Russia is that you're not trusted equally by the British government and by the Russian government. What a life. More than any other British embassy, we are aware of that pressure every day we walk outside of the embassy walls, which may help to explain why many officers remained inside the embassy walls and seldom ventured out. Another victory to Russia! Hurrah! It's hard to exaggerate the feeling of being under scrutiny by the intelligence services in Moscow. Unlike any other expat job in the city, as a diplomat, you are constantly under the microscope. At any time, in the most random ways, the FSB can try to intimidate you, or more sinister, obtain KOMPROMAT. KOMPROMAT is a compression of the Russian words for comprising and materials, obviously. In 2009, the then UK Deputy Consul General to Yekaterinburg was secretly filmed in a hotel room with 2 prostitutes. As soon as the video was leaked in the press, he resigned. The media speculated on the role of the FSB in the video's capture. But he didn't appear to be under duress as he was snorting coke off the hookers' stomachs. It's common practice for the FSB to enter diplomats' apartments while they are not at home. I have a good colleague who had a favourite ornament that she kept on her mantelpiece in her apartment, and every now and again the FSB would come in and turn it round at 90 degrees. She'd turn it back, and a few days later they'd come in and turn it again. When the FSB had been for a visit, it was common to find an unflushed poo in the toilet. I call this state-sponsored shit. If the agent was a smoker, there might be a cigarette butt on the toilet seat. If it was midwinter, the windows at the apartment might be left open. Mostly you never saw them. You just knew that they had visited. With a couple of high-profile and violent exceptions, the FSB don't normally cause physical harm to foreign diplomats. Low-level harassment is intended to undermine an officer's feeling of security and make them question whether it's in their best interest to stay in Russia. But having served a tour in Helmand province during the most violent period of the Afghan conflict, soft surveillance never really bothered me that much. Catherine and I laughed off the oddities of perfect Russian couples wandering on the street outside of our apartment block, then appearing at the table next to us in restaurants on the other side of town. We were starting to enjoy family life in Moscow. When interviewing officers who'd applied to work at the embassy in Moscow, I asked them to think seriously about whether Moscow was right for them. If they were prepared to come with eyes wide open, ready to laugh off the harassment and perma surveillance as a bit of a joke, then the chances were they'd be fine. I never felt my family was under any threat, not even a single time during 4.5 years in Moscow. And we really enjoyed our weekends and holidays in Russia with its parks, restaurants, and attractions. Really had a great life. However, at the back of my mind, I was always wary of being compromised. In those circumstances, regrettably, it's almost impossible to trust anyone completely, including the British staff. But I was determined not to let that stop me having a normal life in Russia and to make friends where possible. And I made many friends during my time, and we remain friends to this day. A few days later, I walked into work and steeled myself for the daily battle with the diplomatic police. Yards ahead, I spotted a British colleague holding hands with a female member of the Russian staff. A frown wrinkled my forehead. This is going to end in tears. And you know what? It did, but sadly, the Cabinet Office asked me to redact that section of the text. Thank you for listening.